Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. Do you have a definition for what you would consider to be hardening of the heart? We've talked about that concept a number of times. We hear it in relation to Pharaoh. We've seen it happen with different rulers, different kings here in the Bible so far. But what is that to you, and what do you put in your mind? I think it's important for us to understand the idea of closing off our heart. What is it that we know with our heart that we don't know with our head, and vice versa? Humans are really, really good at thinking with their head, and we like to go into deep intellectual musings. We want to study, we want to know. We think that we are capable of knowing, I think, a lot more than really we are. If you look at all of the studies that get walked back, things that have been put out into mainstream knowledge, for instance, that the world was flat and had very limited landmass, and then we learned that how the earth moves in the cosmos and where the sun is, and although some people still dispute that, I will grant you, but we like to think we can know. And I think that all of that causes us to change how our body was designed to know God. So we were designed to instinctively feel with our spirit, and I would suggest to you with our heart space, we are instinctively designed to recognize God all around us, recognize His creation. But we close that off because we are willful. If you've ever experienced something where you instinctively, immediately feel awe and wonder, but then you close it down and you want to explain it with science instead, or you rationalize an experience away so that it doesn't have the meaning that it had when you initially experienced it. I think that that's what we're talking about here. So I'm reading in Deuteronomy 29 through 31, and it starts off with Deuteronomy 29 verse 4 saying, "To this day the Lord has not given you a heart to know, eyes to see, or ears to hear." And this is a really curious statement that I started trying to unpack, because here we have the Israelites who have walked around with God in the midst of their camp. So they should know more than anybody else that God is real, and following God has blessings, and not following God has consequences. They've seen people get sucked down into the earth. They've watched a mountain tremble and gush fire and smoke and produce Moses with the 10 Commandments. They've seen all of these things, and yet we're still seeing that God has not given them the heart to know, and the eyes to see, and the ears to hear, which leads me to believe that our instinctive knowing and holding on to that childlike, innocent taking in of truth, the truth of God, is something that we are not innately holding on to, that we tend to shut it down and turn on our brains or our reasoning ability. And when we do that, we cannot see and hear what God is truly putting in front of us. So it tells me that God has given us the tools for it, but He does not give us He doesn't give us the ability to use the tools. We have to decide to use our eyes that are open to seeing God's majesty, our ears to truly hear Him speaking in our lives, and our heart to know Him, our heart to know things immediately when we feel truth, when we experience through the heart space God's truth in nature, or we feel it. I think, gosh, it's really hard not to use words like thinking and feeling. I've experienced things in the past of opening up the heart space and feeling communication from Holy Spirit, and I think that closing off that space because we can't have just heard that. We can't have just experienced that. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical. It's not reality. Humans are trying to always create an alternate reality in which their brain is supreme, instead of living in the reality that God has control over everything around us, and so anything is actually possible. He is giving us the tools. We have the ability to know God with our heart. We have the ability to see and hear Him, but it is obscured from us. We have to be somebody who chooses to use them. We have to be somebody that develops the muscle. The heart is a muscle that pumps, but it's also a muscle of knowing. And actually, we're seeing this in science, that there is a muscle memory with the heart, that there is more going on, if you will, on a cognitive level with the heart than we maybe knew before. And things like this absolutely should give us the reason to suspend all that we think we know in science and allow room for God. We cannot know everything. We cannot rest all of our experiences on rationality or human reasoning, because it is ironically very shaky ground. Whereas opening our heart to know God, seeing and hearing Him on that innocent level where we allow Him to guide us and allow Him to give us our knowing, is actually so much more sure. In these passages, God really lays it out that this sort of knowing, this sort of truth, we're not going to have to go on a quest. We see this throughout all mythology, that the hero goes on a quest to gain some precious item or some precious knowing. And God says down in verse 10, this commandment is not difficult to reach. It is not in heaven that you would send someone out on a quest to get it. It's not beyond the sea. It is so very simple that either we use these tools and follow God's commandments and trust innocently, and there is life and prosperity. If we choose not to use these tools and instead we exercise the muscles of human rationale, human intelligence, science with a big dollar sign at the beginning, there is only death and adversity. He is being very clear in this space. And I think it's really important for us to understand that exercising trust, being innocent and approaching God's creation and seeing Him and His design in it requires us to exercise a set of muscles. It is not us doing nothing. It requires us to have action. It requires us to see and hear and to know with our heart. And it is a different work than studying and reading the latest scientific study, clinical research, listening to the expert. It is going out and opening up our minds, our eyes, and our ears. And how cool that the Israelites are being told this before they walk into the promised land, where everything is possible for their life and their prosperity. But also they can choose everything possible to choose death and adversity instead. I pray that God is blessing you today and that He brings you back to spend time with me on another day. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review, or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Dawn Combs Really.